Hyundai killed it with the IONIQ 5, so if you're more of a sedan fan and you've been waiting for this Tesla alt, then expectations are high for the IONIQ 6. As always, we're going to take a look at this thing from the outside and talk about what it's been like to live with. And a quick note that the 2023 and 2024 model years are exactly the same, so no matter which one you're looking at, all of the information here will apply to both. Let's go ahead and take a look. We've got a bit of a polarizing look here from the side. You either love it or hate it, especially this back end, whatever's going on here. It does kind of almost look like there were three different designers from the front to the middle to the back. But this color is called Transmission Blue. We're looking at 191 inches overall. It's going to be more of a mid-size, closer to a Camry than a Corolla, closer to an Accord than to a Civic, and pretty much right in between a Model 3 and a Model S. Wheelbase here is going to be 116 inches long, so nice and long, good for that ride quality, and about an inch longer than you would see in the IONIQ 5. Of course, we've got the door handles that go flush because everyone's doing that nowadays. I kind of miss regular door handles, but it does help with the design. It does help with the overall aesthetic when those are pushed in. We do have keyless access. Just hit the button there for lock and for unlock here. Get those to pull out. Those will actually open up as soon as you walk up to the car too. If you walk away with the key in your pocket, then they will lock up. If you walk towards the car with the key in the pocket, then they will automatically open right up. Note that the keyless touch here with the little pixel is only in the front. Both of the front doors, the backs do not have that. As you saw, these mirrors are also power folding. That is only because we are in the top spec, the limited trim. Do love we have more of these pixels going on through here for the LED integrated turn signals. Those turn signals, as well as the blind spot monitoring, as well as heated mirrors, are going to be on all three of the trim levels, but the power folding is only because we're on the limited. Same goes for the camera down here because we got the 360 view, as well as the view out the side for the blind spot monitoring because we are in this limited trim level. This wheel design here, I love what they've done with those. These are 20s. You're going to be on 20s whether you're in the SEL or the limited trim. You're going to be on 18s if you're in the base, the SE trim. That one probably rides even nicer, though this thing really does kind of have a luxury level of ride quality to it already. And we're wrapped in all season tires here. These tires, last time I was in an IONIQ 6, I had some issues with the tires. I hit some pretty major ruts in the road and blew a tire and knotted another one, and the tires were really difficult to get a hold of, so just something to take note of. There is only a mobility kit here, like the Fix-A-Flat kit. There is no spare tire, but that's really the first time I've had a flat in probably about 10 years, but figured that was worth mentioning because those tires were rather difficult to get a hold of. Front end here, I can't say I'm a fan of this sort of bulbous look over here, but I do like that they at least put some kind of contour in there and didn't just make it flat all the way across, I guess. We got full LEDs again with these sort of pixel looking things going through there. Love to see that. But these are projector style full LEDs no matter what trim level you're on. Auto high beams, auto headlights, no matter what trim. I like that they've got all this contrast going on down here. They did a good job with all this gloss black, kind of breaking things up so it doesn't look super weird, you know. A lot of these cars now, we're starting to get used to cars without grills, I guess, at least I am. But with all of this sort of these patterns going on down here, it just looks a little bit less strange, a little bit more familiar. This one does have the parking sensors across the front, as well as that front camera because we are on limited trim. And we've got this sort of active arrow thing going on down under here. Those will flip open when you turn the car on. Kind of a cool little feature, and little vents going on the side. I wish they were real vents, but again, it does sort of break things up, make it look a little bit less strange, a little bit more sort of familiar. Back end here, we got this little shelf going on with a little lip. A lot of pixels going through here for the bar here, this light bar. Love to see that. LED taillights, subtle little spoiler. We do have the parking sensors on this one, as well as your backup camera in this little pixel here, as well as the little pixels in there for your push to open. If you don't want to push to open, you can also use the key. Note that it is hands-free no matter what trim level you get. That's pretty cool. But this dinky little key, Hyundai used to have such nice hefty keys. Don't know why they switched to this, but your button right there, hold that down, and it will open up to 11 cubic feet of space. I will give you the real measurements right here in the video. But you do have the 60-40 split on the seats. Just pull those levers there. Got access to the lights on the sides. You got access to the back of the charge port over there as well. Underneath here, as I mentioned, tire mobility kit, no spare, unfortunately. And then you've got the button to close. I like what they've done with the back end here. Again, more of these squares, these pixel looking things going on, and some of this gloss black to just sort of put some contrast out there. I like the lower half. Up here is still a little bit strange to me, but down here on the lower part, I really like the back end of this thing. Some other notes about the key here. We do have remote start right there on the key. So lock it up, hold that down. And there's no exhaust sound, always throws me off, but you do get the flashing lights. That will tell you that it's on. It also has the Scare Your Friends feature right there on the side. It's actually a parking help. Just hold it down. You can get the car to slot into a spot for you, going forward or backward. And then hold that button down again if you want the car to shut back off. I do love this little floating IONIQ 6 through there. I feel like there's a missed opportunity here with Alanis Morissette. I don't know if anybody else hears the "Isn't It IONIQ" in their head every time they see this. It's like 10,000 gas stations when all you need is a charger. Okay. You can open the trunk with the key, but for some reason we haven't gotten to the point where you can open a frunk with keys quite yet, but hopefully we get there soon. Though there is not a lot of space underneath here, half a cubic foot. It really can't fit too much. And while we're in here, even though this thing has an engine delete, there is clearly no engine underneath here. We'll talk about the power and talk about the charging. So this thing makes 320 horsepower, and then you're gonna get 258 pound-feet of torque if you're in the rear drive version. This all-wheel drive version, that's a motor on each of the axles. This one is gonna make 446 pound-feet of torque, and that is just a massive number for something like this, even though it does weigh about 4,600 pounds in this particular trim level with the dual motors, but it just can move so quickly. As far as range, looking at 270 miles of range in this one, about 305 if you get the rear drive version. If you drop down into the SE trim level, the base trim level, with that rear drive configuration, then you actually get about 361. That's what the rating is for range. So that's a pretty solid number, though 270 is really plenty when you're talking about daily driving this thing. In terms of charging, if you've got a 350, this can accept a 350. Well, not if you have one, but if you can find a 350 kilowatt charger, then you're looking about 18 minutes to go from 0 to 80%, which is pretty solid. If you're on a 50 kilowatt charger, it's 73 minutes to go from 0 to 80%. If you're on a level 2, then it's going to be just under 7 hours. I always recommend you at least have a level 2 if you've got any sort of decent commute. Like I've got about a 50-mile round trip commute. By the end of the week, I start to get a little bit of range anxiety here on my level 1 charger. But with a level 2, then I would be able to recoup overnight a lot more. I've been testing out both the charger that came with the car as well as an EV Lectron charger that company has sent me. The one that came with the car, I'm getting about 1.3 kilowatts per hour here on that level 1. That's your standard outlet. And I've been getting about 1.6 kilowatts per hour with the EV Lectron one. And it's got some nice little features on the side where it gives you like an indicator of what exactly it's doing. Gives you a little bit more information than the standard charger. So that's a nice little touch. I would not be mentioning that if I did not think that it was actually an interesting product. So take a look at that one down below in the comments. Interior wise here, we do have quite a few similarities to the IONIQ 5, but also quite a few differences. This one being the limited trim, it is fully spec'd out. We do have the synthetic leather here, though you actually get the synthetic leather in the SEL trim as well. The base, the SE, is going to give you cloth instead. There are some hard plastics here. I wish that those were a little bit nicer here in the top spec, but they give you a little bit of texture just to sort of throw things off a little bit. With the big speaker down here, this one does have the Bose sound system, again, because this is the top spec here. You got the leather wrap steering wheel. The heat is because it's the limited trim. Otherwise, you just get the leather wrap steering wheel with the nice buttons. It's laid out very nicely. I do wish these weren't gloss black, but I like the switches. I like the rollers. I like the nice easy buttons for easy access here, for controlling your gauge cluster, for controlling your highway drive assist, for controlling your infotainment, your voice control, all of that, as well as the nice big button for your drive mode, and the paddles here for controlling that regenerative braking setting. And even though we do have your gear selector down on a stock here, you still have your regular lights and your windshield wiper control on stocks as well. Glad they're not getting rid of those. I love what they've done here with the design, where they have the vents going sort of all the way through, the pattern of the vents going all the way through, all the way across here. Though I don't like this tacked on feeling that we have with the infotainment and with the gauge cluster. Everybody's doing this nowadays, and I really don't like it, especially when it's just flat and it feels like kind of an afterthought, and we have a rectangular screen behind a round thing. You know, the wheel is very much in the way of the top of this, so I can't see things like what my speed settings are for my highway drive assist. This is where a heads-up display would actually be really helpful, and I'm actually really surprised that there is no heads-up display option in the IONIQ 6, even in this limited trim. But that would really help with the few things that I can't see that are on the top here. I wish that those were showing there. Now, outside of the fact that I don't like the tacked on look, and I don't like that I can't see the top of it, the rest of it is done very, very well. There's a dark mode, there's a light mode. It will show you what the wheels are doing. I love that mode here, where I can see how charged my battery is, as well as what wheels are being powered at any given moment, just because I'm a nerd and I like to see that. You can also see your speed in like a graphic sort of way, and you can see whether you're charging or whether you're using power. And it's a very, whoever designed this look, the graphic designers on this really did a great job. I just wish it wasn't a rectangle behind a round steering wheel. I wish it wasn't so tacked on feeling. And then same goes for the infotainment over here. It is very tacked on, and being flat, it's a little bit harder to reach the far edge of it. I wish it was curved in a little bit at least, though even more than that, I wish it was integrated a little bit better. But in here, we do have Android Auto, we have Apple CarPlay. Those are both standard, but they are both wired. Hyundai and Kia are just starting to introduce wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, so hopefully that makes it into the IONIQ 6 sooner than later. But you do have that, and the system here is quick. It has all of your range information, your battery information, as well as your heat and ventilation for the seats. These seats are heated standard, but ventilation is only because we are in the top spec. Same with the heated steering wheel, only because we are in the top spec. But those settings are buried in here, which I really don't like. I wish that the heated steering wheel button was on the steering wheel. But outside of that, you do have all your, all kinds of vehicle settings through here. You have your quiet mode, which Hyundai likes to put into their cars, where you can sort of lower the back speakers if someone's back there sleeping or reading or whatever they're doing. Underneath here, we do have a few buttons for quick access to things like your nav and your media, as well as your cameras, because this one does have the full 360 view. Very helpful. Actually, quite a few camera views in here. Very helpful, different camera views, especially when you have a tight parking space like cluttered garage, or if you're in a city or somewhere where you really have to get into a lot of tight spaces. It is really super helpful to have those extra cameras that you get on this limited trim. And actually, there's a camera through here as well that I forgot to mention, where if you hit your left signal or your right signal, it will show you what's going on in your blind spot on either side, right through here, right here through your gauge cluster, and that is only in the top spec here. But underneath those quick access buttons, your HVAC control is touch. I don't love this. is not my favorite. I wish that they would have just kept physical buttons. It's taking up the same real estate that it would if it was physical buttons, and I definitely don't love that. But at least they are outside of the infotainment, so they're a little bit easier to use, but I wish they were actual physical buttons. Underneath, we do have the wireless charging in the upper two specs, but again, because it's wired Android Auto, I have my phone cord spaghetti going on. We had a huge space down underneath the cup holders, which is kind of cool, just like extra space for stuff. I love that they have that, and I love that they didn't just do the open space all the way across like they have in the IONIQ 5, because I feel like having that footwell all the way open means if you have junk sitting in the passenger side footwell, then it could just roll over, get into the pedals and stuff. So your window switches and your locks are actually here in the center console, which I'm not the biggest fan of, because there have been a couple of times where I had to get around the car, have to grab something out of the passenger side, or go help my kid get strapped in, something like that, or the car is on and I go over there and the door is locked, but I can't unlock it from the key because the car is on. The doors do have some cool ambient lighting going on at night. These blues and greens are actually 64 different colors you can choose from. That's going to be your SEL and your limited trim that allow you to have all those ambient light settings. The SE, the base trim, is not going to have that. 8-way power adjustable seats, bolstered pretty well here, heated no matter what, as I mentioned, ventilated only because I'm in the top spec here. Do have the memory settings on it, again, because we're in the top spec. These mirrors here on the sides, I wish that it was auto dimming, at least on the driver's side, but even in the limited spec, you don't get that, unfortunately. They do tilt when you go into reverse. Nice little touch. In terms of the back seat space there, 35 inches, 34.7, which is not a ton for how big this car is. I was kind of surprised by that number, but that never really does tell the whole story. It feels pretty spacious back there, especially since you don't have a tunnel going through, because you don't need that tunnel here in an EV. They do have the cup holders in the center there. They have their own vents. There's a vehicle to load down here, only because we're in the limited trim, which basically means that you can charge things or you can plug stuff in to the car and run off the car's battery. So overall, really nice place to be. You know, just a few little things. I wish the sunroof was a little longer. I do wish that we had wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. I do wish that we had a heads-up display. Wish we had physical buttons down here for the HVAC, but really, those are sort of nice to haves versus really need to haves. Really a nice place to be overall. So driving this thing around, I had really high expectations just because the IONIQ 5 was so good. It rode so well. It was quick. It was such a nice car. And this one, being more of a sedan guy, lower center of gravity, I'm not sitting up so high, and it has the longer wheelbase. It rides better because of that longer wheelbase, but both of them ride extremely well. You know, when you have an EV, you don't have combustion happening under the hood, so not as much vibration, not as much to deal with there. It really rides super smoothly. Your weight is balanced across the bottom because it has that sort of skateboard platform with the batteries across the bottom. And the noise in here, you know, without the engine, it makes other noises a little bit more apparent, but they've done a good job of keeping the noises out in general. You know, you do have some wind noise when you're on the highway. It is apparent. If you're listening for it, you are definitely going to hear it. Same with that road noise. Now, the big thing here is just how quick this is, how much control really that you have with a car like this. You know, and these EVs with the high power all-wheel drive, this thing makes 446 pound-feet of torque, 320 horsepower. And you're talking about all four wheels getting into the action. This thing is quicker than most sports cars, easily off the line. You put your right foot down and you move. It is immediate. It is crazy with that grip with all four tires and how immediate that torque is available. There's no waiting for anything to spool up. It just moves. And this does have a few different driving modes, but even in the normal mode, it is super quick. And you're probably going to want to leave it in normal mode most of the time because it'll sort of ease you a little bit more into that speed. versus in sport mode, you're really going to get a lot more jerky. And then if you have your iPedal on, I do love that Hyundai gives you the four different modes for the regenerative braking here. If you put this on the highest setting and you're in sport mode, you will make yourself car sick. The only time that I've ever made myself car sick is driving an EV in sport mode with the regenerative braking all the way up. I love how Hyundai gives you 4 different settings there and doesn't just shove you right into like the on all the way like a lot of other EVs have these days. Now, outside of all that, so that's all great, really. The drive, the ride quality, the quickness, the regenerative brake settings, the handling, it's quiet. It's really, all of that is just really, really great. We've got all these great safety features. You know, I was in that CX-90 last week where the safety features were a little bit overly aggressive. In this one, they really work very well. You've got the radar cruise with the stop and go, and that does not matter what trim level you're in, you're gonna get that anyway. It does have the highway drive assist as well here, where it'll keep you centered in your lane, and it works very well. I've said this a million times, but the Hyundai Kia Genesis system for lane centering is one of the best out there. It also has the blind spot monitoring, the rear cross traffic alert, and again, none of these systems are overly aggressive. It's not super in your face, but it's enough that you know that something's going on and you need to pay attention. The visibility all around is really good. You know, sedans don't typically have the best visibility, just the shape of the back window, especially, you know, this one is a very curved shape on the back window. A lot of times the sides will sort of be rounded out as well, but this one is very wide and it feels very tall for a sedan. It's easy to be skeptical about EVs if you haven't driven one. This one is executed very, very well. Driving an EV is an experience worth having just because it feels a lot more like luxury. It feels quick. It is the thing with the EVs, especially the ones with high power. You know, this has more power than most sports cars, and the torque is just there. It's just available. It's so quick. You have so much control, and everything is just so quiet. It rides so smoothly. It's just the driving experience overall is so good here. At the end of the day, we have a pretty solid Tesla alt going on here with the IONIQ 6. You know, again, with the IONIQ 5 being so good, expectations were pretty high, and I think this thing delivered very well. If I were looking for an EV, this is definitely one that would be very, very high on my list. I do wish the back seats had a little bit more space. I wish they had a heads-up display at least as an option. But other than that, it really, you know, you get decent range, you get tons and tons of power, great driver's assist features. It is a solid car for the money. As always, thank you for watching, and make sure to hit the like, hit the share, hit all the YouTube things. It really does help me out. Leave me a comment below if you do have any questions for me, and hopefully I will see you next time.